Okay, welcome back to Under the Finfluence. My name is Julia Hartl. I'm here with Christine De Silva, and this week's featured guest is Dr. Derek Kraft. I met him before I was at HIMB, and Derek was in the middle of his dissertation journey. He was at the Tobo lab, and I started in the shark lab, and he was working with the shark lab, and now I work in the Tobo lab, and now we're in a podcast together.
Hooray!
But I think
that's life, I guess.
Start this episode with a little twist.
Yeah. So I guess we decided today we're each going to start with one of our probably favorite shark facts. I can go first. My recent slight obsession is that there are at least 2 species of sharks today that are not solely carnivorous, but they're omnivorous. They actually can take nutrients and energy from plants. Did you guys know what species those are?
Isn't one of them like a type of bonnet head or something?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the bonnet head.
What's the other one?
I don't know.
Think about it. So kind of the opposite of a bonnet head. The bonnet head, they think that the reason that they're able to digest seagrass is that when they're eating animals off of the sea floor, so if that's a crab or something, they're also grabbing seagrass at the same time. So they're opportunistically able to get some nutrients for that. Kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, completely opposite size, so super, super big, and is a filter feeder.
Whale sharks.
Basking
sharks.
Whale sharks.
Whale sharks. What?
Yeah.
I looked down to see if I had one on my shirt.
They're going to be looking for that in basking sharks too. Yeah, he's like, is there one on your shirt?
I was like, I think. No, I don't.
Yeah,
nope.
Collar?
It's not. I don't think so.
So if you're like swimming around with your mouth open all the time, filter feeding, right? You're also going to be taking in the other stuff that's just around the plankton, so seaweed. That's why they think they're able to get nutrients from plants as well. Hopefully we'll find some other species, I wouldn't be surprised, that do this as well, and I think that'll really change how people are viewing sharks today. Definitely not those crazy man-eaters if they're also going after lettuce and salad.
At least they don't eat women.
I love that so much.
Mic drop.
Men?
Is that your favorite shark fact, Jules?
The global statistics tell us that the normalization of the curve is that they don't eat women. I think my fact is about the prehistoric sharks, and because
not you, no,
it's for adults.
Yeah, but I like
keep going
because even modern science, and then we're mixing with I almost said anthropology. Oh my gosh, archaeology, and people are trying to redraw these structures from bones. We still don't realize that birds are just dinosaurs. But for sharks, I think my favorite one is the Helicoprion, because it's this crazy weird spiral, and then it's is that how the teeth started? And then people the number of wild drawings of that type of shark just make me cackle.
To explain the Helicoprion jaw, right? It's the lower jaw that is kind of like a snail's shell, right?
Spiral.
That rolls over. It spirals over on itself, but it's just like a jaw.
It's like a jaw in the shape of a cinnamon roll.
Yeah, but it's
there you go.
Isn't it like a recovered bone structure? Or, well, I guess it wouldn't be bone, but because they have kind of ossified type of cartilage, I guess. Because it's been, we know, I don't know actually what we have as far as the fossil evidence, but we know that it's massive goatee that just grew teeth and just went like this for a long time. And they're well, where did it happen? Did it start there and you just kept growing teeth? Yeah, it's weird. I like it. I don't know. Derek, what is your shark fact?
I think my favorite shark facts also have to do with how long sharks have been around. I think it's really fun to tell people that sharks have been swimming in our oceans just as long as trees have been growing on our lands.
Yeah.
And then I like to follow that up. I'm actually, sharks have been swimming in our oceans longer than Saturn has had her rings. She's had her rings for
that's
400 million years. And sharks have been swimming in the oceans for 450 million years.
Oh, Kurt,
Saturn's like a little baby.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I really hope that puts things in perspective for people. Hey, this is how long this creature's been around, and it's amazing.
Just blew my astrological sense of awareness.
It's such a cool and very difficult thing to be able to wrap your brain around, right? How long that actually is. But it is relatively easy to wrap my brain around how quickly we're ruining that to make it sad. But they've survived for hundreds of millions of years, and we're going to overfish them and, ruin the oceans in hundreds of years.
Yeah. That's how that fact ties into the, oh my God, what are we doing?
Right.
Yeah.
But humans are just like these really natural destructive forces that have also colonized the planet to make it as comfortable as possible for humans.
And when I'm trying to lighten the mood, I just tell people another fun shark fact is sharks have 2 dicks. And I think that's pretty cool.
That's
one for the right side, one for the left.
I've seen unidicts, though. Do we call it that if they used to have 2 and now they have 1?
I like that, like, so they're dicks, right? They're called claspers. And it was because they thought that the male used his dick or whatever to actually, like, grab onto the female.
Oh, well, they do flare.
Right? Because they had seen... Because, like, when sharks and other animals, like, when he puts the clasper inside, then it gets, like, stuck inside, right? Until he's finished. And so they, like, just assumed he was holding on. But what actually happens, right, is, like, they gulp a lot of water and then they flush that through the claspers. That, like, forces the clasper to open up. Like, there's, like, that tip on the end that opens up so that it can't, like, literally can't come out of the female until he's done. Right? And then he finishes and then that, like, retracts. Anyway, they're not actually holding her.
No, but I've seen that nothing came out. So I get how I never knew this about this, like, water system pumping the freaking through.
Yeah, it's like a pump.
Because I've seen them display also where they swing a clasper.
Yeah, I've never opened up the clasper.
Yeah, and you're just like, people are like, "What's that?" And you're like, "Well, do you want the full answer? Because he's only 8. Like, I don't know."
Yeah, the mommy and a daddy.
I forgot about it until now because sharks are the earliest model of internal fertilization.
So the first animals to fuck.
So all these other fishes were like, "Oh, they're just a fish," and they just, like, put it all out into the mix of the ocean. We're swimming around every day. And the sharks are like, "Nah, I got a better idea." And now
sharks have also been around.
Humans.
They were doing it way before fish were doing it.
Well, but fish don't do it.
They're doing it before it was cool.
Oh.
Man, the sound bites from this episode are going to be fired.
Now you need to introduce yourself, Derek. Whoa!
Well, okay. So now that we know Derek's favorite shark fact, let's actually get to know Derek. So, Derek, what have you focused on when it comes to studying sharks?
Yeah, I focused on studying conservation genetics. So, majority of my work, I was looking at silky sharks, which are a pelagic species. They interact super heavily with the tuna fisheries. They're caught a lot. When I was fresh in the research, they were the second most caught species on the planet. Just because of how much they're interacting with the tuna fisheries and also with the shark fin industry. And we don't know a lot about their migration pattern, if their population's like one big population across the whole ocean, or if there's lots of smaller populations, like in different corners of the ocean. A lot of my work focused on looking at samples that we had collected from all over the world with the help from Melanie Hutchinson, who collected most of them, and I just collected like a few more and did the actual work. So lots of kind of population genetics. And then I also kind of went on a tangent project, which to see like, hey, if a shark bites like a surfboard or something else, do you think we could get the DNA off of it and see what kind of shark it was? 2 like very different types of projects, but I did a lot of work around both those ideas.
Fine, this is good. Yeah, this is what we do every time. Don't even stress.
So that sounds really cool. Lots of conservation stuff. Want to hear a lot more about the surfboard project you did, but how, first off, did you get into that? I know you met Jules in Hawaii, but what does that background look like?
Yeah, I got my bachelor's in biology from Oregon State University. They had a marine option program that I did, and I spent a semester out in Newport, Oregon, doing like a marine biology field course. And like I was into biology and I thought the ocean was really cool, but that course really did it for me. We spent tons of times in tide pools, and I knew, I was like, whatever all of this is, I just really want to be involved in it. And so I was like graduating from my undergrad, and I was trying to get jobs. My idea was like, I just want to get back to Newport and just get involved in like all the research happening out there, maybe like work for like the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife or U.S. Fish and Wildlife, something along those lines. And as I was graduating, I just wasn't getting a job. Couldn't get a job. And so I said, well, I'll just move to Newport and I'll like keep applying and like, be more like, people will know who I am if I live there, right? So I actually got a job at a brewery, and they had a lab job at a brewery that I didn't know that was a thing. And they let me loose, and they're like, yeah, here's your lab, go for it. And I was like, wait, what? What do you want me to do?
What kind of chemistry do I do for beer?
Yeah, they're like, they're like, go ahead. I'm like, what do I do? They're like, lab stuff. I was like,
Science.
what? Okay.
You were what, like
Uh,
21, 22?
so I graduated on a Friday or whatever. I took that Monday off to move, and I started on Tuesday, like out of undergrad. So yeah, working in a beer lab. That lasted like 6 months before they were like, I don't know if the lab's working. I'm like, yeah, fuck me neither. Like, so I started working in production in the brewery and, learning how to filter the beer, keg the beer, clean the tanks. And then eventually a job opened up at the distillery. And I went and learned how to make whiskey and rum and gin. And that was all really fun, but like not what I set out to do. So at the same time, I started volunteering at the Oregon Coast Aquarium and I became a diver in their tanks. Like they have the big tunnel walk-through
Good
tanks.
job.
It was so cool. And so I got to dive in these wonderful environments with lots of fish, beautiful visibility, and like a hot shower, like as soon as you hop out of the tank. Like it was the best diving I've ever done. But one of their big tanks was their open pelagic tank that was just full of sharks. There was 7 gills and smooth hounds and lots of leopard sharks. And I just got to swim around these pretty big, docile creatures. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is so awesome. And it's like, I really, really want to get to know sharks better. And around that time, I got lucky. I also met a now very important mentor of mine. His name's Mark Marks. He's a Newport, Oregon resident who did his PhD studying white sharks in South Africa. And he just took me under his wing. And he's like, you want to study sharks? All right, you got to go to grad school. I was like, okay.
You're like writing notes. You're like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I showed up with my notebook for our first meeting, and then I realized it was just going to be casual. We got to know each other, but like, he helped me write like research proposals to send to PIs to be like, hey, look, I've already thought about this. I've already done some background research. I already know how to put together a report. I mean, I sent out tons of those, and eventually was like, I just need to like go to some conferences. So I went to an American Elasmobranch Society conference and just started meeting people. I met Mark Royer and I started emailing with them about like their volunteer program. And he was like, hey, we're all full up. And I was like, okay, well, what do you guys look for in candidates so I could like be more prepared in the future? And he like told me some things like animal husbandry and research experience. I was like, oh, great. I've got research experience and I've been working at this aquarium for like 3 years now. Like I've got all this animal husbandry experience. And I think, honestly, he was just like, fine. Like, the tone of his email was like, okay, fine, sure. Like, if you just leave me alone, then you can come be a volunteer. And I was like, yes! And I moved to Hawaii for like an unpaid internship to come scrub a tuna tank and feed sharks. And
every kid's dream.
And that's how it all started. So I started coming out to HIMB, which is a research station on a little island out in the middle of a bay off of a bigger island in Hawaii, which was absolutely wonderful. I volunteered there for about a year before I got into grad school. And at the time, the Shark Lab wasn't taking any new students, but the genetics lab that was up the hill was. And I met them and came to a few of their lab meetings, and everything just clicked from there. I actually got into the program and started working with Brian Bowen and Rob Tonin. Yeah, then I was in the Tobo lab for my entire 6.5 years of my PhD there.
Who was in the shark lab at that time when you were cleaning? That was Melanie before she was a doctor, and James, or?
It's Melanie, Mark, and Danny.
Oh, yeah. So we've got some shout outs here. We've got Dr. Melanie Hutchinson now. We've got I think before maybe her was Dr. James Anderson. We shouted out Dr. Mark Royer and also Dr. Danny Coffey. And then now we got Derek Kraft, who's also a doctor, and me and Christine, who are not doctors, but we want to.
Not yet.
And then, so you were in, but Derek, I think you were already in your PhD when we met when I was in the shark ecotourism world, like hardcore. Yeah. And then you were like, like PhD is pretty serious. And I was like, cool, yeah, but like, like sharks are cool. And you're like, but it's pretty crazy. Like, you just can't grasp it. The best part of your PhD is when you get accepted and you tell everybody, like, I'm gonna go do my PhD. And you like start it. You're kind of like, oh, this is kind of a lot. And it's like year after year. You're just like, what am I doing? I don't know still, kind of, but okay. Here we go. I
agree. And I hope I never told you it's a lot, like, don't do it.
I don't think.
It's exciting.
I think you're just real with it.
Yeah, and I think at the time I was in the I feel like there's a few stages of grad school. A few stages. There's a few like you get in and yeah, you're stoked. I don't know about you guys, but I worked really hard for 2 solid years applying and emailing PIs and trying so hard to get in. Finally got
Just to
in.
get
So
in,
stoked to be there.
I had to re-apply because I fucked up my application.
Didn't get into any of the first schools I applied to. I was devastated.
How long did you wait though, or between? What was your gap period between your undergrad and then you didn't do a master's? You went straight to PhD?
I started as a master's student.
Yes.
So first of all, to answer your question fully, I took 4 years off. And then you get into grad school. And we're talking about the phase of grad school. You're excited you got there. You get your first wave of oh, this is a lot. And that's still when you're taking classes and stuff. And then you get through all your classes and then you're like, okay, now I'm just purely doing research, or your graduate assistant, or you're a research assistant, whatever other job you do to get paid to also still be in grad school.
Yeah. Because low-key don't pay for grad school. That's my slogan.
Yeah. But so work another job and do that research so that you can do your research on the side.
Right.
Or have another job outside of that to help pay rent, which I did. So
yeah, I feel like it's so subjective based on what school you're at as well. Because there are some schools that just don't allow you to take outside jobs.
They can't control what you do outside of this university.
Yeah, there's
Go to hell.
Yeah, I was right.
When I TA'd, my salary,
Stay on the island.
my yearly salary was $18,000 a year.
Boy,
can you live in Hawaii for $18,000 a year?
Anywhere.
You were there's a time period of heavily protesting wages for UA system.
Yeah. So I finally got into grad school, and then the first semester so they're cutting all the TA ships, and we had to go on strike. We had to plan a strike and a sit-in, and all of a sudden we're all camping on campus to protest this thing and raise awareness. I had this guy walk up to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm in the market for a tent. What are you guys selling?" I'm like, "We're not fucking selling tents. We're protesting all about to get kicked out of school." So not only fighting to get in, then fighting to stay, and then fighting to stay in, and fighting to make enough money to live. It was a lot.
That's why
I feel that right now.
I graduated in 2012 with my undergrad, so I didn't go back until 2019. I was didn't fight in the same way that you did, because I ended up meeting Dr. Carl Meyer when I was working on Searcher, but I felt I really didn't realize that gap in academia. I also came in as a master's student that transferred to a PhD track, but I've had this conversation with both master's and PhD students where there's such a difference in every university that is different, but what your data set is that you're crunching. Are you walking into a program and you have a data set? Are you walking in and you're still figuring out your proposal and what you're even going to be doing? And then,
That's me.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing though, because you didn't go in, you went in and had an idea or a graph that flipped upside down 3 times.
We spent 4 years developing a program to analyze the type of data that we had created.
Yeah.
Not knowing that was starting that process, not knowing that was part of the deal. Not I think we know how to analyze this. And then as we got into it, we're so here we are now being computer coders that I'm looking at my dusty snorkel set over there. Why did I come here?
But your Silky project is very cool, and we also want to hear more about the Silky Shark project and more about the forensics project, because they're both very cool products. No matter the
road we took to get there. Yeah.
The traumas inflicted.
Yeah. So the Silky Sharks are pretty cool. They are currently managed by these regional fisheries management organizations. There's 5 of them, but Silky Sharks really only occur in 4 of them. So it's pretty much the Pacific cut in half with a very straight line. The Atlantic. So there's 2 in the Pacific, 1 in the Atlantic, and then the Indian Ocean and Red Sea are all. Those are the 4 different areas, and they're managed as single populations in those big areas. So as we got into looking at the genetics about them, sure, the Atlantic and the Pacific are very different. I'm just shouting this out into the world. If you wanted to look at species variation between the 2, it's probably a layup.
Like they're an
Yeah.
ocean apart? Okay.
Yeah. But
Somebody
like they're
need a
not mixing.
project?
They're not mixing.
Right.
Like no one's going around the edges and mixing in there.
They're not
And
using the
actually,
claspers between the two.
no
No
claspers between.
clasper
They're not
usage.
going through the Panama Canal. But even in the Atlantic, we found like pretty huge differences between even like the Gulf of Mexico and then like off like the New England coast. Like those populations were pretty diverged. And then of course, we looked at some off the coast of Africa that were pretty different from the ones off the coast of Brazil. And there was a lot of genetic variation there. So like certainly different populations, but even across the Pacific, the signals were a little bit lower, but we found a lot of genetic variation between all those populations as well. So there's a lot suggesting that it's not these big panmixtic populations like we thought. Like there's lots of little isolated pockets of silky sharks. And so let's say, for example, there's a bunch of fishing happening in, well, I don't know, like the Southeast Pacific, which there totally is. As they extract sharks from that area, the expectation is sharks from other areas of that regional fisheries management organization will like come in and like replenish that area. But that's not happening. So they actually are distinct populations in these areas. And so when you look at like how they're being managed compared to the actual biology of the animal, it's insufficient. So they need to be managed on that level. But then you actually get into, shark fisheries management, which I did after grad school. I went and worked with NOAA.
To Dr. Derek Kraft, the Knauss Fellowship.
I guess the Knauss Fellowship. They pronounce the K.
I didn't know that.
Knauss.
Okay.
Super cool program if you're looking for something to do after your PhD and you want to get involved in policy, or master's just after grad school. Gets you really well connected into the NOAA world, although the politics, it's not going well for the people in the world. But you get in there and you realize what sort of resources that the fisheries managers actually have to work with, and like, they don't have the resources to manage those populations separately. They barely have the managers to manage that species at all. And it's so disheartening. You're like, I did all this really cool work that, like, in the practical application of it, the resources aren't there and the funding's not there. And it's not that they don't care, but like they literally have bigger fish to fry. Like mostly what they manage is the tuna populations, because that's where the money is, that's where the fishing is, and that's what they care more about. And so everybody who's out there eating fish, like tuna fish all the time, or other types of fish, like you're voting with your dollar to say, yeah, we would rather eat all the fish than like really protect the oceans. That was a really big jump I just took. But like, that's kind of getting to my root of like, we do vote with our dollars on this stuff.
100%.
And we all vote to keep eating seafood. And so therefore the sharks are going to keep suffering.
On the note of the population, like I don't know the genetics still well enough to be like, oh, are you using SNPs or how are doing their comparisons? But I also had looked some of the fishery data that they put out, that NOAA puts out for like bycatch rates and things, or when you get species breakdowns. Something that I had looked at briefly before, because like when you're saying that the silkies were the high catch rates at this time frame, my understanding is that if over a broader time scale, there would have been like a couple of mako species, oceanic white tips. So like maybe that the space isn't being filled, like a gap in fishing by another silky shark population, but possibly there's that kind of open ocean movement of these like transient pelagic species. Because I think if you look at the catch data over a longer time period, we're like, oh, well, that's why we don't see makos, because they're very fast and they were very quick to the hooks. And then we're seeing like the oceanics with their big wide wings and they're just like jumbo jets, like, and then anyway, just that cycle. Anyway, I was just segueing like the cycle of other species of sharks as well. And I think we're at silkies now. And at least oceanics have protections now. But yeah, it's very complicated, the biology. And then it's just even one species, let alone all the species, let alone the sharks within the ecosystem. And yeah, none of it's all driven by the dollar in the end. So,
yeah, oceanic white tips have protection as far as you're not allowed to land them and you're not allowed to bring them onto the boat, and you need to report all of the bycatch. But like, they're still caught and killed in fisheries and then just cut loose.
Yeah. Well,
or just they don't die on the ship; they die later.
Right.
Yeah,
that's a hard one to watch.
But instead, you did an HIMB forensics project.
Yeah. I know I mentioned this before. HIMB is a little island off of a little island. So
Yeah.
in the mornings, we all get to take this 1.5 minute boat ride together. And the boat ride's really intimate. Only about 6 of us can fit on these little 14-foot Boston Whalers. And you just get like a minute and a half to catch up with whoever happens to be sitting on the boat with you that morning. And I was on the boat with Dr. Carl Meyer one morning. And he's like, Derek, I've got a question for you. I was like, okay. He goes, do you think if a shark bit a surfboard that the DNA, like we could get some DNA off of the surfboard? And I was like, man, Carl, I don't know, but like we could find out. You know, and he's like, yeah, I think I want to like, can we explore this? And I'm like, sure. So I think I went out tagging with you guys one day, and I've actually got a video clip. We got a cool video clip of like the first day we did it.
Yay.
And we took the surfboard, and Haley took it and she stuffed it in a tiger shark's mouth, and like they bit it. And we got it out, and I took a little cotton swab and like swabbed it up and packed it away and took it back to lab, and sure as shit there was some DNA on it, and we're like, hey, look, it's a tiger shark. That's cool. So we thought that was absolutely fascinating. And this was late 2019, like precursor, we know what's coming up, right? And we did it once, and we just wrote up a little science note on it. We're not like full on publication, but we sent it into a couple journals like, hey guys, this is just a cool thing we did. And they're like, yeah, can you do it more? Maybe like with some other species too, and then we'll like consider publishing it. And we're like, all right, fine. So we like went out on a couple of trips. We did it with 1 or 2 Galapagos sharks, you know, and then 2020 hit, and we weren't allowed to go out on the boats. However, I had given a little bit of like a drunk talk on this to some grad students at a conference back at the American Wellspring Society conference.
Were you drunk, or was it a talk with beer? Let's be clear for a second.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
No, this was like in our
Become
hotel
a grad
room.
student. You'll become an aficionado of beer.
Yeah.
In that mug, Christine. Oh.
It's just water. Don't worry.
I had like wanted to give 2 talks at this conference because I really wanted to talk about my silica shark work, but I also just thought that this surfboard stuff was fun and like interesting. And so I just gave it to like whoever was in the hotel room. I asked for consent. I was like, do you guys want to see like a short little like 5-minute pitch of this funny project? And in the crowd was now Dr. Laura Meyer. And we were emailing, and I was like, yeah, we can't go out and collect. And she's like, oh, we've got sharks biting stuff all the time for our research. Do you want me to just like see if we can do some swabs? I was like, yeah. They collected like 30 samples from white shark, lots of white sharks, tiger sharks. Oh boy, I haven't looked at this in a while. Who else was there? and a few other species. But this was all during COVID, so they got to collect a ton of samples for us. And so we were actually able to put together like a proper publication. Out of 32 bites, we got DNA, like could confirm species out of 31.
Nice.
It's like really high success rate.
Yeah.
And the only one we didn't get was like a wetsuit, and then we just didn't get it off of there, but it was pretty high success. And so I defended my PhD on December 4th of 2020. On December 8th, my phone starts blowing up. I was like, what's going on? Like, I'm packing up my apartment. I'm like about to leave Hawaii and move on to my Knaus fellowship. And there had actually been a fatal shark bite on Run Kauai. Man, I should check my facts before I start these shows.
There was a fatal shark bite in the state of Hawaii.
It's in my paper. There was a fatal shark bite with a surfer, but the shark had actually taken a bite out of the board. And everyone's like, are you going to test it? Are you going to test it? I was like, yeah, sure. And Carl was like, I'm trying to get a hold of the board. And we had actually already sent our little swab kits to a couple of the other islands just to like have them there for this situation. And so it was about 72 hours later, they actually were able to go swab the board, and the board had gone to a police station and like sat in an air conditioned room. We're like, we have no idea if this is going to work. Like we were usually
prime conditions, fresh AF.
Yeah. Like this just, 72 hours later, and we were still able to get DNA off of that surfboard and like positively identify, hey, we knew it was a tiger shark because it's Hawaii and that's generally what's happening. But just to confirm it and like to show that even in real situations that can work was, something I was pretty proud of. Like, hey, cool. Like we added one little brick in the wall. Like, hey, here's some places you can actually apply this type of research. And
And then,
for like the family and everybody involved, like you get the full story as well as we can.
yeah, because it's.
So for when you're swabbing it, where is the DNA coming from? Like what part of the
Yeah.
shark?
Yes.
Great. So sharks do have like a mucousy, it's not saliva technically, but they've got spit in their mouth, right? And if you think about the way that they breathe through like ram ventilation, water is being forced in their mouth and out their gills. If their spit wasn't like super, super sticky, they would just be like losing it all the time. So actually the mucus layer in their mouth is very sticky, just to say it, sticky. So when they bite something and then they let go of it, like they leave some of that mucus layer behind.
But you
so
explain, I think you explain this to me very visually, because it's like the teeth and then the gum tissue and the mouth, right? So it's like the teeth go in and you're like, oh, the teeth maybe aren't very salivate, but their gum also bites through, right?
Yeah. So you're not like stuffing it down in the teeth marks, but you're swabbing all around the impression. And I mean, really, like when I'm swabbing, I'm like I'm coloring in between the lines. Like I'm just getting a whole whatever. If it's here,
that's great.
That's super cool.
It's super
That
cool.
seems like a very like applicable, unfortunately, more so than the Silky Shark study because of money.
Yeah.
Right? Not necessarily because of what's needed when it comes to conservation, but that seems like a pretty cool. So many questions. I'm going to ask one though.
She's like raising her hand in the front row.
Yeah, I'm like that kid. Ask me. Okay, like let's say you wanted to continue that study though. Like, what would you do next? My brain's like, ooh, what I might do.
For us, it was a proof of concept. Does this tool work? Tool works pretty well, and even in not ideal conditions. The next, for us, kind of the next logical step would be like, if they bit a human, could we get DNA off of the human? Which is a great segue into my next project.
Yeah.
It's not that. But you look at the stack of paperwork for our research, which was literally like, you didn't need much. But as soon as humans are a subject in your research project,
oh my God,
the amount of paperwork,
oh my God,
and let alone a human in distress.
Yeah, like, just an interview or like a discussion. Yeah.
If I walked up to like on scene, someone just got bit by a shark, they're bleeding out, the paramedics are like patching them up, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm here from HIMB. Can I just like swab your leg really quick? They're like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah,
So we tested, what doesn't require a lot of paperwork is if you throw a fish in a shark pen and the shark bites off part of the fish.
Yeah.
And you pull out half of a fish, can you swab and get the shark DNA and separate it from the fish DNA and figure out what species of shark? So that was the next leg of the project that we went down. And the answer was you can. You need to we had to fuss around with the right primers that will amplify shark DNA and not fish DNA, because they're different, because sharks aren't fish. We could do a whole nother podcast on it, but we won't right now.
Wait a minute. We're all fish, okay? We here are all fish.
So using the same tool as the surfboards, but just in a little different application, we were able to kind of characterize shark depredation in the areas and figure out who the players were. And we weren't like surprised by the answer, but it was nice to kind of confirm that out in the pelagic waters. There was a few silky sharks, but some tigers and 1 or 2 oceanic whitetips, I think. I should really check. I was like, what should I study before this podcast? Yeah, your own papers, because you don't remember your answers.
No, this is amazing. This is a ton of information. So don't even go there, Derek.
I do think if you're comfortable with it, I think today is like this time is like a perfect time to have the discussion of like, we were talking about this a little bit last time. What else can you do to make yourself hireable, and whether or not like that's academia doesn't really matter. But it's a pretty serious conversation right now. I'm having
let's go like
young grad students.
So Derek had this amazing story, comes from Oregon. He figures out his way right out of undergrad. He jumps right into the aquarium. He's connecting with an amazing mentor. He is able to leverage himself off of the diving board of the beer circuit over into Hawaii to do these amazing projects. Trial and error along the way, tribulations along the way. But overall, like the picture is still very pretty until you graduate. Then what do you do?
No. Right out of graduation. So
good. Well, because then you still did.
I finished up.
Sorry, keep going.
I graduated and packed up and left Hawaii and essentially left all of that behind. And where I moved on to was my Knaus Fellowship.
Right,
So
right,
my
right.
1 year fellowship working in the highly migratory species management division of NOAA. And that was
Also very
really
cool.
awesome. Yeah.
Mm.
Like I cared about sharks. I cared about protecting their populations. And now I'm in the office that actually does it.
You're like,
Yeah.
fuck yeah.
Putting
Yeah,
it all together.
like, okay, doing the science and then showing it to everybody and realizing they can't do anything about it sucked. So I went into the office where stuff was happening. I was like, I'm here. Let's finally make a
Like-
difference. Let's go. And I did. I got to write I got to write the first draft of the oceanic whitetip and
Oh, very cool.
yeah, the rule for oceanic whitetips as
Yay!
well as protecting scalloped hammerheads.
Yay!
So we kind of wrapped that all into the same rule. Yeah, I did the first draft for that. It got published maybe a year or even 2 years after I started it because it's just a long process. But like I got that ball rolling and that was awesome. And then a lot of the other stuff I got to do there was like write permits for people to do shark fishing for science, and then just like constantly keeping an eye on catch numbers compared to quotas, and then like send out the notice like, hey, we're getting close to the quota for this or this or this species. But I also saw how it was all managed. And so like in the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic, you've got the large coastal conglomerate, which is 14 species, and they are managed as a single unit.
Mm.
So they are not managed species specific. And there are the sharks we care about, the ones that we've already listed as endangered, and oceanic whitetips getting endangered got them out of that conglomerate into their own category, and scalloped hammerheads getting listed as endangered in certain regions gave them the attention they needed. And that stuff's all really good, but there's still so much that is like we do have shark fisheries in the US that are legal and fairly sustainable. But that's also just because there's no market for it. The market is in the fins. Here. So they catch the sharks, we land the sharks, we sell the meat. You have to land the sharks whole. You can't fin them and then just bring back the fins. They sell the meat for not very much, like $1 a pound. Cheap fish and chips. I mean, a lot of fish and chips in Europe is all spiny dogfish. So
comes from Cape Cod.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then we dissect them in science class every year.
But what's interesting here, and I mean, don't necessarily quote me because I haven't looked into this in a while, but I mean, I'm from Cape Cod, I'm in Rhode Island, so New England, I guess, is that our dogfish fisheries, like you were saying, like pretty sustainable. And not only that, but it also brings in, jobs and money to the area that really needs it, especially year round, because a dogfish, you can fish for, they have a longer season. And for a while, they were trying to actually make it something that people here would want to eat, so they didn't have to ship it over to the UK. And a few restaurants in Boston tried to dress it up and make it fancy. And people are like, hell no, I'm not eating this fucking trash fish. I haven't looked into this much at all recently, but Cape Cod was, of course, a place where the cod fishery was very important. And then we overfished the cod and they're ground fish. And now people think that part of the reason that cod are not coming back in the numbers that they were before, they're never going to be able to, of course, is that the dogfish are taking over that niche. There isn't space, literal space for them to grow as large as they used to grow, or to have the numbers, the abundance that they used to have, because another animal, maybe the dogfish, are there, quite literally there. So I thought that was really interesting.
It's a great segue back to the time of NOAA, because I also realized my time there, our sole goal is not to preserve the fisheries. NOAA is in the Department of Commerce. We are for now. Our job is to keep the economy going. Our job's to keep revenue from these money-making fisheries going.
Right.
It's our first priority is not conservation.
There's no cycle. It's a bust.
Yeah. So it was really eye-opening, and again, another little slap in the face of we also need to keep these fishermen in jobs. We also need to keep this economy going. We need to appease both sides of the stories. We need to make the fishermen happy, and we need to make the scientists happy, and we need to make restaurants happy, right? We need to make the seafood market. We just kind of have to balance all those scales, and preserving the populations isn't the highest goal.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's going to be black and white, and everything needs to work together. Also, just finding like alternative streams of income if necessary.
Were you working then this whole way through? Were you still, because now you're back in a brewery setting, so have you kind of also like intertwined your beer game through your science game?
No, here's what happened. The Highly Migratory Species Management Division that I worked in, that office, they were hiring 2 people right when I finished my fellowship, doing the same work that I had been doing. And
Sorry, this was 2021?
This is 2021, like late 2021. I think it's technically January 2022.
Okay.
Is when my fellowship ended. And I didn't get it. I didn't get the job.
You were too good, Derek. You were too good at your job, I think.
Yeah, no. Literally, they were like, it was a tough choice. But like the things that it came down to was like one typo, like in my cover letter. And then like
rough.
One thing I had said in my interview that was like, there was 3 teams in my office, and they were like it was so tight of like all the candidates were so good. And I started looking more at those numbers of like, hey, like when I would apply for jobs, I'd be one of 75 qualified applicants and one of 60. And you're like, oh my God, there are so many of us that like want to do these jobs, and there's so few of the jobs. And that like ended up being the story. Like I would interview, and nothing would come across. I did interview for
IUCN.
Man, yes.
Or were you going to say another one?
Next.
Okay,
so I had an interview with the Nature Conservancy, and I got a first interview, which was pretty great. And then I didn't get a second interview. I was like, hey guys, I just wanted to follow up. Like, I didn't get a second interview. I was just wondering, what I can do to be more, marketable in the future. And they sent me back a really polite, like nice email. They were like, hey man, there were 220 qualified applicants and you got a first interview. Like your resume is great. Like there was just a few people with a little bit more experience, and you're like, okay, great. But yes, my interview with the IUCN. So my dream job pops up. It is with the Shark and Ray Special Areas.
Shark Specialist Group. I know this one, the SSG.
Shark Specialist Group. So they were hiring, and I was like, oh my God, like finally this is how I'll make a difference. This is where I'll actually get in there and actually save some sharks, protect some sharks. And they're like, come to your interview with 5 slides, and you're going to answer these questions. Like, what would you do in this situation? How would you handle this? And not like in a job setting, but like, how would you set up these protected areas? What would you monitor? What are some things you would keep in mind? And I was like, okay, great.
That's
and
some
I
solid
showed
questions.
up. I did my homework. I brought it. I was really happy with how I presented. I'm like pretty good at presentations, like nailed it. And I know this woman. I had interacted with her at Sharks International in Brazil. She had offered me samples. I was like, all right, this is great. And it all felt really good. We were talking about if we could talk again sometime soon. I was like, oh, hey, before we get off the call, there is nothing listed for salary ranges for this position. And I'm just curious, what are your guys's, what are your starting numbers? Just give me a ballpark here. And she's like, okay, well, there's no negotiations for this. This was set by our funders, our funding agency who we got the money from. This is all set in stone. We can't change it at all. But the position offers $40,000 a year, and we cannot offer benefits. And I was like, well, I don't want to have multiple jobs anymore, and I can't afford to only work this job. So you require a PhD for this position? And you can only offer $40,000 and no benefits? I really, really want to help the oceans, and I really want to save sharks, and I'm very passionate about this, but I've been fucking grinding for it a decade and a half trying to do this. I have been trying and working so hard to make this happen. I can't afford it anymore. Rent is going up, price of food is going up. Like, I can't even think about buying a house. Thank God I don't want to have children. Like, can you imagine? Like, Jules, I think
Let's
you're
not go
amazing that you
there.
managed to make it
Yeah,
all happen,
Jules.
but like, I just couldn't do it anymore. Like, I couldn't keep interviewing and not getting jobs, and I couldn't keep getting jobs that I can't afford to actually have.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can only grind at something for so long before it just beats you down to the point of like, I guess I'll just take care of myself because I got to do that for a while. I haven't been able to do that in a long time.
It's crazy
and
that
I started bartending at a brewery again because it's fun.
Yay!
And I enjoy
Filling
being
your
in that
cup a little
atmosphere.
bit.
And do you get to do like
joy.
ocean-related stuff though, just for fun, to keep that passion alive?
Oh yeah, Mr. Kite Surfer. Forgot to talk about this.
Yeah, I live in Hood River, Oregon, which is one of the wind sport capitals of North America. Yeah, the kite surfing out here, everybody's, it's very windy, very often. I spent 8 years kite surfing and teaching kiting in Hawaii, and I think that spoiled me rotten because I showed up here and I was like, guys, yeah, it's windy, but it's super, super like gusty and punchy, and it's just a bunch of like cold, choppy brown water. What the fuck's everybody getting so excited about?
This is the most controversial thing that's probably been said this entire hour.
No, like,
I windsurf, by the way. I grew up always wanting to go to Hood River.
I live in an amazing place and
Now
I'm
you
happy
can
to
go-
live
you
here.
can-
And like, I sail
We can
boats here
race.
and I think that's great, but like, I think the kiting here is not that good and I prefer to ride my bikes instead. So
Hey,
what am I doing with the ocean now? Occasionally doing things like this. Like, they do Pint of Science nights once a
Yeah, those
month.
are
So I've signed up just to go, and I think some of my favorite talks I've done are when I get to just talk about things I think are cool, not necessarily like, here's my research, here's my data, here are my results, like very formal presentations. It's like, hey everybody,
Yeah.
sharks got 2 dicks. Did you know that? And it was a blast. Like, I had so much fun. I'm probably due to do another one soon. I've done a couple of them, but like, just sharing my passion for fun is still very enjoyable.
so I think it's time we segue into our most popular section, the Chum Diary for Dr. Derek Kraft. Please tell us your most rotten story that you can think of related to sharks, chum, fish, all of the above.
It was close to one of the last times I went out on a tiny little boat with Jules.
What
and
can
we were
I
out
say?
tagging.
I have that impression on people.
I don't know, I never went back again. So we were up on North Shore. We were out tagging Galapagos sharks on this little tiny 14-foot whaler. And we'd pulled up this Galapagos shark that was super green and feisty.
We were going to do a tag and stuff.
So the shark slipped upside down, and I'm holding its pectoral fins, and we were just finishing up, so we were about to let it go. And to let it go, you roll it back over, and it comes out of tonic and mobility and usually takes off. But this one was still pretty spunky, and as soon as we got the tail rope off, the tail comes out of the water and slaps all the way around my back, and the tip of the tail
whole
wraps
lower
around,
body, like half of the body of it, because it wrapped around your whole body.
Wrapped around, and the tip of its tail just whips my nipple like super hard, like snap. You could hear it. It was like the worst titty twister I've ever had, accompanied by along the ribs and stuff. And Jules does have, was it a video? It's
I had
a video.
GoPro. Yeah, I had a GoPro.
Not of it happening, but of
The aftermath.
Well, no,
the redness around my body.
Yeah, we were very busy because we had done the tag. We're doing the release, so that's like a coordinated effort of you take out the barbless hook, you release it, and then he's the last one in there, and you were just, I don't know, looking at you the whole time, pissed, like, don't touch me. Or if it's just you were in the right spot at the end where we pull off the tail, and it's like, fuck you guys. And then Derek was just there Gah! And then instant, I mean, you could see the whole tail, the caudal fin, the upper lobe, and that little fleshy corner is Derek's nipple.
Perfect.
Amazing.
Bullseye.
Couldn't have planned it.
That was bad. How long did the impression last? Was it there for a while?
He's
a big bruise?
I got it tattooed.
Got a tattoo.
Still there.
No shark rat. It just lasted the day because it was over my sun shirt.
Oh.
He wasn't bare.
I had a shirt on.
To say. Yeah, he wasn't bare.
Good thing you're wearing a
wrestling.
I don't know why I was imagining you topless. I'm sorry. Please wear clothing while shark tag.
I mean, it's like a love bite. It was like a You'll remember me forever.
Yeah, I was just trying to get out of there. I was probably trying to. If there
Just
were
a little
if it were
shark.
underwater, it wouldn't have been. It was just propelling
Yeah.
itself forward
Little
through
shark
your body.
BDSM,
Yeah, it was
Just
just
a little whip to remember by.
That happened kind of once. A girl got tail slapped when the shark was on the boat. Like somebody
Ooh.
moved and they didn't tell us they were going to move, and the shark startled and she got hit in the head and got a concussion. And I was like, hey, like I'm going to take you to the hospital later because you just we were in college. Like we should probably like get this documented for your doctor. You're fine, but like you got a concussion, get it documented. So I took her in the ER later, and it's like after dark, like we're there at like 10 p.m. It's like pretty quiet, and people are like, they're coming in, like, what happened to you? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, she got bitch slapped by a shark. And everyone's like, excuse me? I'm like, no, it's exactly what it sounds like.
Oh, Jesus.
And we eventually had to close the door to our room or her room because so many nurses were coming in and being like, I just want to tell my kids later when I go home what happened. Can you tell me? And she was like, I am so embarrassed. Why did you make me come here? So, long story short, teamwork is important and wear your shirt. Anyway, Derek, last words that you want to leave us with? Anything you want to plug?
I mean,
No.
It's crazy that all those amazing you made, first of all, the Canals Fellowship, but then after that, these big name brands that people are like, oh, I want to work there, right? And you now in particular in this situation are like highly qualified and somehow still in this large pool of seemingly qualified candidates. It's like, there's people that are qualified that want to fucking do this shit, but there's not enough avenue. So it's like, on one hand, it's kind of motivating, I guess, to be like, okay, people do care, like people do want to do shit, and people have spent the time and effort to like get there. So it's like, then how do I don't know. How do you flip the dollar? How do you create those?
It's all based on money, and it's money where it comes to like funding for the work, but then also like we are humans in a capitalist system and we still have to make money for us to exist.
Well, I think if you're at the supermarket and you've got all of your seafood right there, and then you have a jar, and the jar is like, this money will save the ocean. This money gets you seafood. Everybody's gonna look at the jar and be like, we want to save the ocean so we can eat our seafood. And they put it in their cart and they walk away. And that was it. You just voted,
It's interesting
and
way to put it.
That's the decision.
Well, yeah, we need to really like slap it in people's face.
I think coming from like my perspective, I hate the fact that I can't just tell people you should care. Therefore, like, let's like just care. That'll like fix it everything because everyone cares about the ocean. But that's not realistic. And being realistic does mean that we have to prove to people that it benefits them economically to support it, to care. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it just needs to inform how we communicate and how we go about conservation efforts. Because you could also look at it as a good thing, as like there's this one uniting thing that we all care about, and it's money. And so you could say, okay, we're going to wrap a lot of our conservation message around that. Maybe it's harder, and maybe as a conservationist at heart, I don't like that I have to do that. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It just means that I don't necessarily agree with it. Or I'm in a position, I'm privileged enough that I don't have to worry about that as my number one because I do have a job and I'm not a fisherman, right?
So we'll package our fish.
I don't think that there is a right or a wrong here.
The ocean is dying because you're buying this cod. The ocean is dying because you're buying this tuna.
That's putting the onus on the individual when it's really like the big companies, right? The governments that are the ones that can make change.
But the big companies would not be big companies if people were not supporting them.
Yeah, true. But they're real big right now. There's some that are really, really big, and their taxes are small.
Yeah, they're supported in a lot of ways. Like there's a lot of infrastructure around supporting them, but they're supporting them because of the income it makes from the customers. If people weren't buying fish, fishermen would not be fishing for them.
We like fish.
I think as well there's an added layer to the fact that this is food, right? Yeah. It's something that humans like literally need. It's not like we're talking about like making an iPhone. And so there's that other added layer of like we cannot sustain our population on cows. So it's a complicated topic. Anyway, Awesome conversation, Derek. I had a blast. We had some few depressive moments there,
Yeah.
but
You're welcome to grad school and academia. Join us.
it's not all bad. I do love it.
But no, that was a really fun conversation. I think we had a lot to talk about, which is fun because some of the stuff that we're discussing is like not an easy conversation to just have on the street with anybody. Like you got to kind of be in this niche, aka Under the Finfluence, aka we are fin friendly, but we are shark targeted. And we did feature Dr. Derek Kraft. Thank you so much for taking the call, for meeting up with us and having these discussions because they are tough, but they're real. And so that's why we wanted to have them and share them and help folks on their next decisions and choices. So thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for having me.
Whee! There's a lot to be proud of, my dude. It may not all be like super happy
Still writing
fun,
it.
but yeah. There's a lot of really pretty parts of your picture as well.